Jimmy Murphy, Pierre McGuire here for another edition of the Eye Test, our on-campus version, as we do every Friday here on the Sick Podcast Network.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to the Sick Podcast. The Eye Test with Pierre McGuire and Jimmy Murphy.
The Stanley Cup winning Colorado Avalanche. And after 22 years, Raymond Mark!
The sickest NHL podcast. It's gonna be sick.
Hey, welcome back, everybody. Great week in hockey. And we're ready to talk some college hockey in a bit, Pierre, with our featured guest for our On-Campus Friday, Mike Harder, the head coach of Colgate University. And of course, you're very familiar with him, with your son playing for the Raiders. And looking forward to that conversation, Pierre.
So Mike's been an amazing hockey story throughout his whole career. Kid from Manitoba that goes to Colgate University, becomes the all-time leading scorer at Colgate, eventually goes back after playing 13 years of professional hockey all over the world. He's a fascinating story. He's a great person. I think he's a perfect guy to actually coach at a place like Colgate, and I can't wait to hear his story and what he's all about.
Me too. I'm looking forward to that as well. But before we get to that, let's talk some NHL and let's look back on last night first, Pierre, and then we'll get into another topic we want to approach. But what stood out to you from the numerous games last night? A lot of great action across the league. What were you eyeing the most?
Steven Stamkos and the Edmonton Oilers versus the Tampa Bay Lightning, and everybody expecting Edmonton to keep their winning streak going, especially on home ice against a Tampa team that's kind of helter-skelter and doesn't have Victor Hedman. And I was blown away by the play of Andrei Vasilevsky. Obviously, he was phenomenal in that game. But you think about Steven Stamkos, and Jimmy and I were talking before we came on the air. I didn't know this, but I was watching the game. He had 4 goals in the game. His last goal was an empty netter. It's the first time in his NHL career he ever scored 4 goals in a game. And you would think a guy like Steven would have done that before. He had never done it before. But hats off to Tampa and to John Cooper. Like I said, they've been a bit helter-skelter, but now they go into the last game of this road trip, even on the road trip, and they go into Calgary. And if they can be 3-2 coming out of a 5-game road trip, that's great for them.
For sure. And we'll get back to Tampa in a second, Pierre. I want to leap a little east there. The Toronto Maple Leafs, and kudos to them. Great job, not giving up, hanging in there. Surprising, too, that at least to me, they leave Samsonov in down 5-0, and yet they come back and they force an overtime and get a point. They don't win, but they get a point. And by the way, just before we elaborate on the Leafs side there, a lot of credit to Columbus too, okay? Because this is a team going through a lot this season. Really have had some bad breaks injury-wise, and it's just been a kind of a nightmare season so far for them. And they give up a 5-0 lead, but they still hold on to win. It's a lot of grit that shows me on the Columbus side, Pierre.
100%. And take it one step further. Patrick Laine fractured his collarbone last night, and who knows, he's out 4 to 6 weeks now. So when you think about it, they've been battling a lot of elements, Jimmy, so you're spot on. But to me, the biggest thing in that game, the wherewithal of the Toronto Maple Leafs being down 5-0 and nobody in Toronto being very happy, obviously, in their building. And for them to find a way to battle back, if I'm Sheldon Keefe, I'm happy about the pushback. I'm happy about the way the guys reeled the game in. I'm not happy with the way they started the game. They were no good to start the game. They would probably all tell you that, Jimmy. But in order for them to really be a good team in this league, they got to find a way to start games on time, and they've got to find a way not to outscore their problems, which is great now. I don't think you can do that in the playoffs, and they've got to find a way to find more structure in their game.
I'm with you, Pierre. And, we were kind of looking at their schedule and we were doing our prep for the show here today, and just a lot of games they're playing, and I don't have the exact number right in front of me, but the bottom line is they're going extra time too much. And they're finding themselves not in a 5-0 hole, but in a hole a lot and having to come back in games. I remember a game recently they played against the Bruins, and they forced overtime in that with a last-second goal by Austin Matthews, but they lose in overtime. You can't live that way. You can't. It's going to catch up to you both physically and mentally. And, those points that you're potentially giving up are going to add up. And, let's get into that now. And we'll loop Tampa back into this with what is a really crazy tight playoff race. I know we're only midway through December, but, like you said to me off the air, Pierre, a lot of teams now at the 30-game mark. 10 more games, 12 more games, we're at the halfway point, It's crazy to think that. It's flying. But you look right now at the wild card situation and the teams right below them. Just say, we'll look at the first two wild card teams. You got the Detroit Red Wings and the Carolina Hurricanes. Detroit's got 34 points, 29 games. Carolina, 29 games, 33 points. And then right below them, and the only reason they're below them is because Carolina hasn't played as many games, is the Tampa Bay Lightning at 31 games and 33 points. Caps below them, 26 and 32 points. And then the Devils, 27 games and 31 points. Pierre, when you look around right now, you're looking up and down that Eastern Conference ladder there. It could flip-flop by the time we have a show on Monday. That's how crazy it is right now. And if I'm looking at teams, if I'm just looking into my crystal ball right now, at what teams could possibly fall out of there permanently, I'm looking at the New York Islanders and the Philadelphia Flyers, and we're not taking any of the credit we've given them, that is the Flyers, despite the season they're having, they're still in a rebuild mode, and that it could eventually, sooner or later, it's going to strike midnight, I think, for the Flyers. I just tend to believe that.
Well, the one thing I'll say is John Tortorella is pushing the right buttons. After 40 minutes of their game with Washington last night, I didn't think they had any chance of winning that game. Yeah. But he found a way to get them over the hump. And obviously, we talked about Owen Tippett the other day. We talked about Travis Konechny the other day. They're critically important players for the Philadelphia Flyers, Sean Couturier as well, and the development of some of their defensemen, especially Travis Sanheim and Cam York. But, yeah, it could fall off the rails there, but that's not a knock on the Flyers. I think everybody kind of knows where they are in their rebuild. John Tortorella deserves a huge amount of credit, but they could fall off. I think the Islanders could fall off. It depends on how healthy they stay, especially in goal. So I expect Tampa will eventually be a playoff team, Jimmy. I really do. Yep. My question is, will Detroit, especially without Dylan Larkin, will they be able to hang in there? And we're going to find out about Detroit here pretty soon in terms of being a real playoff team, or are they just going to be one of those teams that's still getting better? But I would say that you're spot on. The Islanders and Philadelphia are two teams that could bounce out. And I expect Carolina's going to get better, Jimmy. They've been underwhelming so far this year. The fact they won the last two games on their road trip in Ottawa and in Detroit, I think that helps them a lot going back home. But they were underwhelming, very underwhelming on this last road trip.
You notice in those wins, though, Pierre, and I think one of the things that was driving Rod Brindamore nuts, and we saw it in that amazing, I'll never forget it. I mean, it was probably the best intermission clip you'll see, and they were down like 2-3-0 already. And he says, yeah, well, pretty soon we're going to be down 50-0, whatever. So it is what it is. They buckled down, and he must have got to them because they are playing suffocating hockey right now. And that was really why they won that game in Detroit last night. That and an unfortunate miscue by Ville Husso. But still, Carolina has buckled down. And, they're going to need to do that, Pierre, because as you and I have discussed off air, goaltending is a major issue there. And, if the goaltending is not going to be where it needs to be, then the team defense, and I'm not just talking to the defensemen, I'm talking about those forwards getting back and back checking and being there for their defensemen. As a unit, they're going to need to be really tight and just constructed. And that to me is how they win, unless they make some big trade in the near future here. And then let's not forget the Devils, Pierre.
No, good point.
I want to say, too, and speaking of, teams that maybe you think high flying, you think offense, they played, and I got to give them credit. That was one of the best games I've watched all season, was that game. Yeah. 2-1 overtime win for the Devils over the Bruins. It just had that playoff feel to it. Great goaltending at each end. Teams taking chances back and forth. Momentum changes. But they also seem to be paying a little more attention to detail. And voila, they're starting to win more, Pierre.
They are. I think the biggest thing they have, though, is obviously Jesper Bratt and Hughes have a tremendous relationship on and off the ice, and you can see it when they play. It's going to be interesting to see how their development happens defensively. I'm not talking about with the forwards. I'm talking about with their defense. but that's down the road. But I would expect the Devils are a playoff team in the Eastern. I'd be shocked if they didn't make the playoffs. And so that's why these next 10 to 12 games for some of these teams, it's so important. It's what you were talking about before, I think, appropriately, Jimmy. But for the New Jersey Devils, are high flying, yes. And I think Lindy Ruff would like to see them be a little bit more difficult to play against defensively. But I thought against the Bruins, that was a tremendous playoff style game. It's really important for teams to develop.
Yeah, they had that balance. You know what I mean? That, and that's how you win in the playoffs. Is you find that it's fine. Nobody doesn't want you to be offensive or utilize your skill, but you got to be responsible on the other end. Pierre, we're talking about goaltending. That's still a question mark to me in New Jersey as well. And I'm starting to hear, and I know you've heard it at times too, little link to Gibson in Anaheim. And you got to remember, as we've both pointed out, Tommy Fitzgerald knows him from Pittsburgh, seeing him play around there. You know, when Fitzy was with the Penguins then. And Gibson is a name that I'm starting to hear come to the surface in terms of trade chatter right now. Maybe that's a guy, and this is just pure speculation on my part, but maybe that's a guy that the Devils could look at if the goaltending isn't where they need it to be halfway through the season.
That's one name. I don't know if Pat Verbeek's in a rush to want to move him. We'll see. I mean, they've got some nice pieces starting to be accumulated out in Anaheim too. I think there'll be other names that will eventually be out there. You know, you've got to ask, if you're Kenny Holland and the Edmonton Oilers, you got to ask yourself, are we really good enough in goal with Stuart Skinner? Are we really good enough in goal? And based on what I saw last night, and I've seen most of the year, I'd say no. And that's not a knock on Stuart. It's the reality. I don't think he's a starting goalie in the NHL. So how aggressive will the Edmonton Oilers be trying to get a goalie? Because let's face it, for them, especially with the young talent that they have, everybody's expecting them, especially in Canada. They're a legitimate Stanley Cup contender, according to the Canadian media. But is that really goaltending that's going to be good enough to win you the Stanley Cup? I don't think so, Jimmy.
I don't think so either.
You know, you talked about New Jersey in the East. I'm going to talk about where they are in Edmonton in the West.
Yeah. And Pierre, I want to ask you too. You know, you've been in management, you've been a coach, worked in the NHL long enough to see how these
34 years.
Yeah, exactly. So what I want to get, and you hear so many different answers on this. Is it better to go out and get that done now ahead of the trade deadline, or wait until the weeks leading into the deadline and see where the prices shake out? I'm of the belief, get ahead of it. Don't let other people dictate the price. You dictate the price. So I want to get your take on that.
You must have been learning at the altar of Craig Patrick in Pittsburgh, because he always used to try to establish this market. He didn't want people to establish the market for him. He wanted to establish a market. I think when you identify an organizational strength or weakness, you've got to address it. So let's just say, for the sake of argument, you got 14 guys on your defense, and you know that only 6 can play. So you want to keep, 7, 10, 12, whatever you think. But you don't have to keep 14. So you have a chip in the game, the extra defenseman. And let's say you have a weakness at forward, or let's say you have a weakness with toughness, or let's say you have a weakness on the power play and you identify a specialist that you need. You establish the marketplace and go out and get the player that you think you need. The best managers, I find, over time, and I do a lot of case studies on this, they are experts on their team, Jimmy, and they understand, here's our strength, here's our weakness, and they address them. And they don't let it fester. They address their weakness immediately. And if you don't do that, you're not going to be very successful as a manager. You're not going to be very successful as a team.
So follow up on that. Can you do that as much as you used to without a cap? Can you do that now with the cap? How much is a cap affect?
I think you can. I think it can, because you can move money. That's one of the things. Now, you may have to pay a premium for somebody to take your money on, but that's part of the business world that we live in right now, in the cap world. I still know that there's a trade deadline in the cap world, and I know the money's a little smaller when we get to the trade deadline, but nonetheless, there are a plethora of trades made every year at the trade deadline, even though we have a cap. So I don't know how the cap would be really restricted. Here's where teams get into trouble, though. They overspend on young players that haven't established themselves. They're paying for future earnings, and they're hoping it's going to work out. You can write a book on all the contracts that have been given out where teams are forced into it because the fans put pressure on the team or the media puts pressure on the team. They say, oh, you got to sign this guy to an 8-year deal because that's the one thing you have. You can keep him internally. And then you find out 3 years into the 8-year deal, we overrated the player. He's not that good. And you're stuck. You're stuck. So it's the easiest thing. It's the Scotty Bowman, Sam Pollock, Frank Selke Sr. theory. If you're a manager, nobody can know more about your team than you. So you better know your team. And if you make a mistake, you better move it quick. Better move it quick.
Yeah, and I want to say, Pierre, too, you mentioned Craig Patrick, and I'll just keep with that former Penguins GM theme there, too. Another guy that always jumps ahead of the gun, ironically, was a Penguins GM, is Jim Rutherford, too.
100%.
He's been great at that throughout his career, right?
So 100%. But again, Jimmy was never afraid to make deals. And neither Craig, by the way. Craig was never afraid to make – I mean, this is for the younger viewers and listeners out there. I remember clear as day when Pittsburgh made a trade, and Pittsburgh traded away Mark Recchi and Paul Coffey, okay? Mark Recchi and Paul Coffey, two Hall of Fame players. And they got in return Rick Tocchet, Shel Samuelson, and Kenny Regan. And everybody in hockey said, what is Pittsburgh doing? That's craziness.
We're rival, too.
I'll tell you what Pittsburgh was doing. The general manager was so smart. He said, we're not tough enough to play against the big teams. We won the cup last year. We need to get bigger and tougher and meaner and nastier. So he brings in Rick Tocchet. He brings in Shel Samuelson. He traded away Frank Pietrangelo and made sure we had more depth to support Tommy Barrasso. And he brought in Kenny Regan to go along with Wendell Young. But that's what he does. So, and eventually that 92 team wins the cup. It's brilliant managing, but it's great team building, Jimmy. And that's the key. It's about team building. It's identifying your strengths, your weaknesses, and being an expert of your team. And that's what Craig Patrick always was, always an expert on his own team.
I love it. Pierre, just getting a text here, too, seeing that a little off topic, but I think it's newsworthy because we are going to start to discuss the juniors. We're going to do our preview next week.
Yes.
Jim Montgomery saying they are very much considering sending Matt Poitras to the World Juniors now. You were on that weeks ago. There you go. And he's not ruling it out at all. And the text I got was from somebody with Hockey Canada, and they told me, yeah, it's real. This could happen. So very interesting news there for the Boston Bruins. And I'm with you. I think it would be a great move for him right now. They're already not playing him tonight as part of the load management they're doing. Let him go over there. Let him get his confidence. Let him play at a great level of hockey there and a good intensity and excitement. And I think I'm with you. I think it would be wonderful for him, and it's wonderful for any, kind of player in his situation right now in the NHL to go over there and get that experience.
I've been around the World Junior since 1989. It doesn't stifle players. It only helps them. And if you watch Matt Poitras play right now, he's not nearly comfortable enough playing in an NHL environment. He's not strong enough on the puck. He's not strong enough on the back check. He used to dominate the puck below the hash marks. He's not doing that anymore. And you can see defensively, he's getting pushed around. He's getting roughed up. So now you let him go over there. He's playing on an elite Canadian team. They're not a little bit good, Jimmy. They're really good. He's playing on an elite Canadian team. He's going to play big minutes if he goes. Again, we're stressing this hypothetical, if he goes. Yeah. I remember calling you. I think it was a Saturday afternoon. I said, Jimmy, here's what has to happen. Yeah. This kid needs to go to the World Junior. Yeah. And I hope he does. And it would be great for him, and it'll be really good for the Bruins. It really would be.
For sure. Well, let's switch gears from junior hockey, but still some, college players go to the World Juniors now too and have some great success. But let's switch gears to college hockey for our on-campus segment this Friday. We welcome on from Colgate University, their head coach, Mike Harder, joining us here on the Eye Test on the Sick Podcast Network. Hey, Coach, how you doing?
Hey, Jimmy. Good. Hey, Pierre. Good to see you guys. I love this podcast. It gets me through a lot of long drives through through North America for sure.
Thank you. Yeah, we like that. That's what we're here for.
Before we start, thank you so much for doing the on-campus part. It's so great to keep growing college hockey, and probably a lot of people, or maybe a lot of people that listen to you don't know that much about college hockey and what a great development route it is for kids, and segueing right into the World Juniors like you were just talking about. So thank you for that as well.
I'd agree, Pierre.
Well, first of all, I'm not surprised Coach would say that because he's a class act, number one. But number two, Coach, tell us about your journey from Manitoba to Hamilton, New York. Now, I'm not talking about as a coach. I'm talking about as a player. And I don't want to embarrass you, but I want the listeners at home and then the viewers to understand. You're the all-time leading scorer at Colgate University for 4 years, and you played 13 years of professional hockey all over the world. So you know what you're talking about. Tell us about your journey from Manitoba to Hamilton.
Well, I mean, it's pretty simple. You're a good enough player. You play junior, you get a break. You find some coaches that believe in you and you want to play for them, and you develop, and then you get good enough and you can play in college. And Coach Don Vaughn, who was at Colgate for 30 years, I was part of his first recruiting class, and he saw something he liked in me, brought me in, and I've been a Colgate guy ever since. The journey, the 13 years of pro, boy, I could get into that. I could talk about that for a while, but I'll tell you one thing it did for me, though. It taught me how to be, well, what I hope will be a really good coach, a really good head coach, and just seeing how people in other parts of the world are doing things. We talk about why is Sweden so great when they have a population of Massachusetts, essentially. Why is Finland so great? Population's even less. So I've been lucky enough in those 13 years, which is a Colgate number, coincidentally, to be around the world and see how people do things and try to implement it in our development pattern, development thoughts.
Jimmy, one of the things that Coach did this summer that really impressed me was after he got the job, he traveled around and he visited almost every single one. In fact, I think he visited every one of his players from as far away as Victoria, BC, and as far east as Massachusetts. And I wanted to ask the coach, what did you take out of those meetings that really have helped you get off to the start that you guys have had?
Yeah, well, our start isn't as good as we'd hope, but thanks for saying that, Pierre. I think what's really interesting in the college game, and it's something that you don't get to do in the pro game or even the junior game as much, I don't think, is that you get to spend time with not just the kids, the student athlete or potential student athlete, the PSA, but you get to know their families. And because I came in after 4 years, I didn't know any. I knew 3 of our players I'd recruited, the current players on the roster. So I was behind the 8 ball a little bit. So I thought it was a way to catch up, a good way to be part of sort of the recruiting process that I missed. So I was able to connect with kids. The home visits were great, to meet their parents, for them to understand that I truly care, which I do. That can sometimes take months or years. And we just didn't have that time coming in as a head coach, inheriting a great group. So I think if anything, it was a shortcut to understanding each other.
Yeah, for sure. I just want to go back to your travels, and that ties into what I'm going to ask too. You mentioned what it does for you as a coach and all the different coaching philosophies you can use, but this is more about what you're talking about now. How much did your travel just help you as a human being to grow as a human being and understand different cultures?
Oh, yeah, sure. No, I mean, I think when you go to, university, especially one like Colgate, you become, if you weren't before, it certainly opens doors to be intellectually curious. And I was just always in love with the development of athletes. I think I like the off season more than the on season, my friends would joke, because the potential to get a little bit better or to find edge. And, USA Hockey's done an amazing job of borrowing from the Finns, the Swedes, the Czechs. And I felt like in the early 2000s, I was there watching when I played in the Swedish league or the Finnish league. I remember just being excited for our practice to end so youth practices could start, so I could stick around the rink, and I'd have a sandwich in the rink and just stay and watch practice and learn from them. So I feel like I was watching, the small games, the small competitions. I was watching what is now a great model for USA Hockey, the development model. I was watching it before it became practice in this country. And, it's done a great job for hockey in this country. And it's all because of what the Scandinavians were doing, or the Eastern Europeans.
Awesome. Pierre?
So, Jimmy, Coach has been a player in the Colgate Cornell weekend. Now he's been an assistant coach, and now he's been a head coach. Take us through a Saturday night at Lina Rink if you're the visitor.
Yeah, it's fun. I mean, that's another just great thing about college hockey. The Europeans call it the Derby games, but we just call it a straight up hateful rivalry. It's really great, and they're all over in college hockey. If it's Northern Michigan and Michigan Tech, or BU, BC, or Harvard and anybody really probably. But it's super fun. The coaches, we respect each other. We know what's on the line, but the players just love to be a part of it. We get bombarded with toothpaste at the intro, which is interesting, super fun. And then the game itself is just great. It's electric. The things that our fans did Friday night were just great. Our kids were great. And then the things that they do on Saturday night, it's really great. And for each team to win in the other's building, I think that's kind of fun for team development as well too. So it's really great. Their locker room setup, I feel like we're right beside the band. So I go in between periods. And of course, as soon as I go in, the band is firing up every time. It's a lot of fun. Yeah. Well, I think it's all by design over there for sure, but it's great.
Speaking of, here's a little good memory, your most recent one from that rivalry.
Hear them all. Oh, this one comes through. Now a shot to account. They score. Shane was down. He dove out to try and cover the puck, but the rebound nowhere near him, and Reed Irwin drills it home. Schneider. Would have been icing, but Schneider was the first one to lead the pack up ice. Now in front, empty net goal! Ryan McGuire, his second goal of the weekend, and that will put the icing on this cake.
So Pierre's texted me during that whole weekend, just narrating the excitement around him at that. So I got to check one of these games out next year for sure, guys.
Yeah, it's a fun weekend. It's one of those college rivalry games that are just super fun. So I look forward to it as well.
I got to tell you, Jimmy, I've been in a lot of rinks around the world. Coach knows that, and most of the people watching and listening know that. A Saturday night or a Friday night at Lina Arena is a must-see for a hockey fan. It really is. And I think we're starting to get that way in the class of 65 at Colgate, too. It was a beautiful arena at Colgate. And it reminds me so much when BU – Coach talked about it – when BU and BC play, or when Dakota plays against Wisconsin, or Dakota plays against Minnesota. I mean, it's an amazing thing. You go to all these college rinks and you start to realize this is special. This is really cool. And Lina rink, and whenever Colgate's there or Harvard's there, it takes on a life of its own. It really does.
It's really great. And then for the alums to be watching too, we all have huge networks of alums. That's the thing with college hockey. You're not just a student for 4 years. It follows you for the rest of your life. So I'm sure there are a lot of Colgate and Cornell alums in bars and wagering certain things. And I'm sure that was a lot of fun for everybody.
Coach, what are you focused on right now during the holiday season? I know when I was a college coach, it was all about recruiting at this time, and they're still the same.
Yeah, it's funny. It's funny, Pierre. Yeah, we're on the road recruiting. The NHL has their free agency day. What is it? July 1st? Is that usually when it is?
Yeah. Yes.
Well, you know what July 1st is for us? It's every day, it seems like. So we're recruiting. We don't draft, so we don't do that. So we're always looking for free agents, always on the road, always networking, always connecting. So we're doing the prep school loop now. And it's just the assistant coaches. It's a staff of 4. We were just able to add a new one for through NCAA regulations, but where it's just us, it's just us out on the road, crushing it. We're in 4 different directions, trying to cover as much territory as we can. You connect with the kids that you have committed. You connect with the kids you're trying to commit. You see alums. You do everything you can to represent the organization. And at the same time, you're thinking about, I like the way Montreal did their had their neutral zone forecheck last night. Let's think about that. Or you just start scribbling lines down, or what you want your PP to look like. So I've been watching Sebastian Aho a lot lately, just trying to see, because we have a kid that's kind of like him, and I like what he does. So can we do that? So it's nonstop, Pierre. But this is the time of year where we're doing the prep school circuit right now.
Nice. Pierre, I'll let you take it.
No, well, Coach, I was also going to ask you, what's different from when you were such an elite player in college hockey to where the college game is now? You were playing in the 1990s, and now here we are. You had an unbelievably distinguished career. How's college hockey changed, or has it?
Yeah, no, in a lot of ways it has, and in a lot of ways it hasn't. Like from the experience of the student athlete, I think it's exactly the same, with the exception of some kids are looking down at their phones a lot more now. But like I know what's going on. I know when exams get hard. I know when school gets, a little easier. I know what's going on socially. That's exactly the same. On the hockey front, well, one, the sticks are better. So that helps. And that really does help. I mean, you watch guys zip the puck around right now, and a lot of it is because you can flex that stick. It makes me sound really old saying that, and I get that, but that is a big difference. And the kids they're just better. We've really taken again, I've said it, I think there's a third time I use the word development, but we've taken that model and it's gone like through the roof on how we use it and how we can prepare kids for pro hockey. Our schedule of playing 40 games, being in the gym, you're just talking about getting kids bigger and stronger. That's what our kids need so that when they turn pro at 22, 23, 24, they're ready for it. We feel like we can spend Monday to Thursday, or Sunday in our case, we like to practice on Sundays, Sunday to Thursday, really, really coaching these kids, spending time doing video. Like, are other coaches doing that? Sure, college coaches are, but in junior or in pro, you may not have time. You have a game the next day and a game the next day. But we do that. I think every college coach does. You spend time individually with the player. You really get to know them. And then you practice with intention. It's not just a flow game skate because you got to get ready for tonight's game. We have time to do those things that matter, not to mention get them in the gym at least twice and do some footwork at least once as well. So I love where we are. I love working with this group, but I'm really excited about college hockey in general. If you can't tell from my voice and how I'm almost jumping through the camera here.
I want to say too, Coach, one of the things we had Jay Pandolfo on earlier in the season. And one of the things I love that he said was him and his staff do their best to let the players be where their feet or their skates, so to speak, are and live in the moment. And, with so much going, you mentioned, they're always on their phones. So they're prone to maybe see what people are thinking of their game or what teams could be interested in them. There's just so much going on that can distract them. How have you tried to help these kids just live in the moment and furthermore enjoy the moment?
Yeah, that's a good question, Jimmy. And that's a big part of my job. But the phones, we always talk about the phones in a negative way. Sometimes it's good too. Like our kids, as soon as they get on the bus, which I'm sure most teams or all teams do, they get their clips sent to them, right? So they can watch their clips. They can watch highlights of the Ranger game that night. They can just watch a game on the bus. Like, what's better than that? So you're just absorbing all this hockey through osmosis, and it's really great. But yeah, there's some good things for sure. We're getting the most hockey out of our guys. We're using every angle we can, everything we can. And I think the guys are buying in. Like, you're right. We got to get them to live in the moment. And there are other things. They have other distractions. And that kind of bears out, Jimmy. That's an interesting thing. I've been scratching my head. Our home record is not great. And our road record is actually pretty much the reverse. And I think part of it, Jimmy, to your point, is that they don't have distractions on the road as much. On Friday, sometimes some kids will have a Friday morning class that we expect them to go to, of course. But on the road, we're in the hotel. We got a pregame skate. We got a nice lunch. We got a video meeting. They're not thinking about other things. So, we talk a lot as a staff on how do we get our guys, like you said, to live in the moment, get them in a flow state, to worry about their current shift, all those little cliches. And I think as a head coach, that's almost 90% of my job is to get guys to live in the moment.
Jimmy and Coach, everybody wants to go out and get the very best player you can get to help your team be successful, but you're not always going to get the very best player. What are the characteristics that Mike Harder and the Colgate coaching staff are looking for in players?
Yeah. That's a good question, Pierre. I guess it depends on the position, obviously, but Colgate's a high achiever school, and high achievers are high achievers, right? So if you're a high achiever in the classroom, you'll be a high achiever on the ice. You're going to have work ethic. That's second to none. Most kids are the ones that we recruit. They're probably the hardest worker and the best player on their team, right? So that's the first thing. Two, can they I would say carry a conversation, but it's more than that. Are they, I've said it before, intellectually curious? Will they be good alums? That's an important one too. And I think, what we're selling here, what we're about, we recognize that you play hockey, you don't work hockey. So are they fun to be around? Like you're going to spend 4 years with them, and then hopefully I'll spend another 40 years with them as alums coming back to the golf tournament and sharing a couple of drinks here or there. So are they fun? Are they the kind of people you want to be around? Because we're not cutting kids, we're not, it's not how it works. We don't trade kids. So for good or for bad, you're stuck with them. So it's a lot of character stuff. Plus, can they play the game?
Perfect. And I think that's kind of what our podcast is about too. You got to have the eye test both on the player and the person. You can't quantify that with analytics or stats.
You good, Jimmy? Did I lose you?
I don't know. You've been going a little in and out. You got me? I think we got him.
I think we have Coach back. You still there?
Coach, can you hear us?
Yeah. Can you hear me? Yeah, we good?
Yeah, we got you. We got you.
We're good.
Yeah,
I'm good. Pierre and I always So Pierre and I always say that's what the eye test is about, right? I mean, you can't quantify or put analytics next to the person or the player. You got to realize the person, see how they fit into a team. And I think that's great. You have to have, as much as you need skilled guys, Pierre, we say it all the time, you need those grit guys. You need those character guys. The
most underrated thing in any player, how coachable is the player? How coachable is the player?
Yeah.
And, obviously coach is coachable, but his Wi-Fi isn't. That's not his fault.
Well, it's whatever hotel he's in. That's not his fault.
That's not his fault. Exactly.
But that was great. Man, I love his enthusiasm, Pierre. Wow.
I wasn't kidding at the start. That's why I asked the question.
You weren't lying to me.
He went to every single player's home.
That's great.
And he went to go see some of the boys a second time when they were at NHL development camps. Wow. He put in a summer of work. I have a ton of respect for him. Forget the fact that my son plays for him. I like the way he communicates with his players. I like the way he orchestrates practices, and I like his recruiting philosophy. I think Coach Harder's one of those new type coaches that's coming in that's only going to make college hockey better. And I think that's really important. I think college hockey is an amazing thing. I really do.
For sure. I think we got him back. Can we bring Coach in?
Sorry about that, guys. I need to pay my internet bills.
We just said Wi-Fi is not coachable.
There you go. It's the one thing.
Coach, I want to ask you, we ask a lot of coaches this, and obviously Pierre's talked about it as well. Is there one, or I'm sure there's so many, but is there somebody that always, when you look back and you look at what shaped you or who shaped you, is there one or two people, whether a coach, whether it's a parent or a player or a teammate, that maybe had an influence on you getting to where you are now?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's so many people. It's just great. And it's the Colgate community, for one, I fell in love with. The town of Hamilton, New York. There are just so many great people, and it feels like home. Every kid needs good parents to have any bit of success. Parents that are driving to the rink at 6 a.m. or 7 a.m. In Manitoba. I had a coach in junior in Weyburn, Saskatchewan in the 90s. That was unbelievable. One of the first ones that I felt like, wow, this guy really cares. And I remember that. And, I've had coaches in pro that sometimes maybe not as great, or they don't care. And you learn just as much from those guys as you do from guys that do care. I found that really important. That's a good question. Also, like, growing up in small town Manitoba, you're around people, you're around family, and it matters. And to have that feeling of being cared for, or that people are really invested, that's what I want to bring to our guys. I want them to be able to trust. I don't necessarily want to be their friends. I think they're amazing, cool kids. Definitely don't want to be that, but I want a relationship where there's trust, and I want them to know that I have their back. So,
Jimmy, I got to ask the coach. You talked about playing for the Weyburn Red Wings. I've obviously spent some time there at the rink in Weyburn.
Yeah.
Was it Coach McMillan that was your coach there?
Yeah, Dwighter. Yeah.
Okay,
Great.
so I'm familiar with him. And then one other quick one for you. Jimmy, I used to do the loop. It would start in Regina. I'd go to Wilcox to Notre Dame. I'd cut down to Weyburn. Then I would go up to North Battle, or actually go to Yorkton first. And then I would cut across to North Battleford. Then I go back to Regina, and then I'd go home. And trust me, some nights it's a little cold on the prairie. And the coach could tell you.
Yeah.
It's a great story. I parked my car outside a rink in Saskatchewan, and I left the car and I turned it off. And the Zamboni driver goes to me halfway through the game. What are you doing tonight? And I said, driving back to Regina. He goes, no, you're not. I go, what do you mean? He goes, your car's going to be frozen. Nobody's going to steal your car, and we're not going to jump you. So go start it and leave it on. And
That's funny. That's funny. Coach Vaughn tells a similar story when he was out recruiting me back in whatever that was, 92 or 93. He said he stayed at a hotel. He went out every hour, started his car and sat in it for 15 minutes, then would go in and take a 45-minute nap and come back out. Otherwise, he wasn't going home.
No, it was amazing. But what a breeding ground. Like, I learned so much as a coach, just watching the teams practice, watching the players play. He talked about Coach McMillan. Coach McMillan's a legend out there. And one of the kids he had ended up being a first-round pick of the New Jersey Devils, Donovan Hextall. Mm-hmm. And I watched Donovan play there, and that guy was a heck of a player, and he eventually was a first-round pick in the NHL.
Right. Well, Pierre, I like to say it's a good place to be from. Perfect.
Hey, from when I started going to Saskatchewan and Manitoba, I've been up to Flin Flon. I know you've probably been up there too. But from when I first started to where it is now, it's a whole lot better now, I'm going to say.
No, it's
I
really
have so much respect. Teddy Hampson is a real good friend of mine. The late Patty Janelle. So many great people that I met along the prairie that I have so much respect for, and I'll never forget those days. I'm appreciative for every single day I spent out there.
As am I. I feel like I hit the natal lottery being born up there, and being able to grow up over there for sure.
Yeah. Pierre, this is why I keep saying you got to write a book, buddy. You got to get a book. Just Pierre's travels.
Absolutely.
There are a few places. I'm kind of like Coach over in Europe early on. Back when I was playing over there, the Iron Curtain was up, and it was a little different. It was just a tad different. I had a teammate that was a defector. I will not say his name because I don't want him to get in trouble. And I remember him telling me stories on the bus rides after games. I'd be like, really? You grew up that way? He go, oh, yeah. I'm like, oh, my gosh. I'm not going there. It was tough. It was tough to hear.
Amazing. Well, I'll tell you what, everybody in the prairies will have their TVs on starting December 26th. That's one of our best that's one of our best traditions, watching Team Canada kick it off. Yeah.
We were just talking before you got on, coaches. I cover the Bruins. I'm based in Boston, and they're talking now. Matthew Poitras might go there, but I'm glad you brought that up. What's that like for having as a college coach when you have some of your players go over there, or just what do you think of it as a college coach as opposed to what maybe a junior coach views the World Juniors?
Yeah, that's a good question, and you might get me in trouble, but at the risk of getting my Canadian passport revoked, I do very quietly and super secretly, I hope nobody's watching this, but root for the American team a little bit because they're all college players, and we really believe in our model and what it's doing. So the odd Canadian will be a college player as well. And if that's the case, I cheer for them. But I do like to see how well the American model is working and how all these college kids do really, really well over there. It's an amazing experience for them. And, as a Canadian, we just love this tournament. It's just the best. And I know Pierre can talk about it at length in a really smart, educated way and tell some great stories. But, I do reminisce with you, Pierre, when you're telling the stories on this podcast or anywhere you are. And I remember exactly where I was when that happened. And, it brings back really great memories for Canadians.
Hey, I'll tell you guys one U.S. college player who played for Canada that is unbelievably good still to this day, Cale McGuire.
He's okay.
Pretty good.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
Yeah. He's okay.
Yeah, it's great.
Pierre, did you say you started covering it in 89?
I started going to it and watching it in 89. Yeah.
Where was the 89?
Alaska.
Wow.
When was the blackout one, the Theo Fleury brawl? What year was that?
It was after, or just before that, actually. It was just before that. That was a punch out in Piastani.
Yeah.
And Pat Burns was the late Pat Burns was one of the coaches for Canada.
Yeah.
So yeah, Pierre Turgeon just got into the Hockey Hall of Fame. He was on that team, and he was the only Canadian that was sitting on the bench.
Oh, really?
And so a lot of the guys took that personally. They weren't happy with that.
Interesting.
But if you go back to the 89 World Junior, you look at the Czechs. Jaromir Jagr played on a line with Robert Reichel and Bobby Holik. And the Russians had a line of Pavel Bure, Sergei Fedorov, and Alexander Mogilny.
A little bit of speed there.
Yeah. Oh
Pierre,
my God.
hey, Pierre, I'll tell you who wasn't sitting next to Pierre Turgeon on the bench, and that was Theo Fleury. He was. I remember his interview after saying he was just going around punching people.
And he was too.
He was in heaven. Yeah, he was in heaven. Amazing.
Coach, this has been phenomenal. I know you're busy doing all the prep school stuff now. Jimmy, just to put it in perspective, when I talked to Coach to confirm this, he was actually scouting up in Toronto on Saturday afternoon at St. Andrews. And now I don't even know where he is, but totally being transparent, Jimmy. I was on the phone texting with Coach at, I think, 5:15 this morning, just so that's kind of where he's at. So just so you know. Yeah.
Good for you, man. Get some coffee, Coach.
Pierre, I was just getting home. I thought you were too.
That ship sailed a long time ago. But as you can tell, grass doesn't grow on a busy street.
All right.
Pierre, you know what? I'm getting you one of these for Christmas. That I've decided.
Okay.
There you go.
I think that's the Jimmy Murphy gift to Pierre McGuire for sure.
There you go.
Well, Coach,
I
we
appreciate this. I appreciate this, guys. This was fun.
Fun
You've been
time. We'll get you on
fantastic.
again down the road. Yeah, best of luck and happy holidays, Coach, and enjoy the rinks.
All right.
Thank you. Thanks, Coach.
See you soon.
Thank you.
That's Colgate coach Mike Harder joining us here on the eye test. Man, that guy oozes enthusiasm for the game and life, Pierre. And he's perfect for the college game.
Oh, he's a winner. He's a winner is what he is. And I've seen it firsthand. Just like other new coaches, especially running a bench for the first time, he's learning a lot as he goes along. He's a better coach now than he was 16 games ago when the season started. And, that's really good for the players. It's great for the program, and it's awesome for Colgate University. But I would just tell you, his staff is outstanding. And it's if you're a parent of a child, you want your child playing in, if he loves a game, to play in a position or a program that Colgate is under Donnie Vaughn before, and before him, Terry Slater, but now with Mike Harder. It's phenomenal to see him around the rink. It really is.
That's great. And, it felt good, too. And he says he loves that we're doing this segment. We love it, too. It's really
I haven't heard one college coach say it isn't good.
Yeah.
And listen,
and
I'm
those
biased.
are our most important judges as far as I'm concerned. So
I'm biased. I was a college coach for a long time, and I was fortunate to be part of some really good programs. And I worked with some amazing players and with some great coaches. And I'll always remember my college times, and part of it was right now, the recruiting at Christmas. But I spent a lot of time out on the prairie. I spent a lot of time over in Europe, and it makes you better. It makes you better as a professional, and I always will be appreciative of all those opportunities that those universities and colleges provided for me, always.
Well, and one thing Pierre, you can elaborate on if you want, but one thing I notice about good coaches, whether it's college, junior, pros, what have you, is no matter how high they get in their profession, they never put themselves high enough to not learn more from previous coaches and from those that came before them, and to be coached themselves. And I feel like that's what makes a great coach, is that person is not afraid to still be coached by somebody else.
Jimmy, think about the man that you cover almost every day, Jim Montgomery.
Yep.
How much – now, he was an elite coach at Denver, winning a national championship. but think about how much in his life he's learned and continues to learn. And I know some of the people that he goes to for advice, and they're very, very successful people.
We had one on this show.
We've had one on this show. And so, no, I mean, that's how you get better.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to ask a question, because more times than not, people in this business won't be afraid to give you a good answer. They want to see the game improve as well. So I think that's one of the great things. And, you know, I remember, and I'll make it quick, but sitting with Scotty once, I think we were actually in Regina at the airport getting ready to fly out.
There you go.
And it was actually during the World Junior in 1990. And what I remember is him talking about the people that helped him along the way. And he started with Frank Selke, and he talked about Sam Pollock, and he talked about all these legendary, Claude Ruel, he talked about all these legendary people that helped him along the way. And he said every day was a learning lesson. And you know what? That's coming from the winningest coach in the history of the sport. He never was afraid not to learn more. He always wanted to learn more. He still lives that way as a 90-year-old.
Well, I know it's not coaching, but that's how I try to live in my profession, Pierre. You know, I'm always asking you questions. And when the late Russ Conway is around, I mean, I would talk to that guy every day and pick his brain, because you can never gain too much knowledge in whatever you're doing in life. So I think that's a great lesson for all of us to keep there. Pierre, this has been a ball again. I love doing these on-campus segments. And as you know, we were saying to our production crew, and I think we mentioned the other day, but just to remind our listeners, we will not be on a week from today. So we're going to be Monday, this coming Monday, and then Wednesday, and we'll do our World Juniors preview then. And then we'll be off the following Friday. And then, of course, that Monday is Christmas, and we'll be back the 27th. We want to remind everybody, we appreciate you doing it. We know you're doing a lot more now. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Really helps a lot. And Pierre, I will talk to you on Monday, my friend.
We are, just so the listeners and viewers understand, we are efforting to try to get some very high profile.
That's right. Thank you for reminding me. Yes, we are.
For next Monday and Wednesday. Now it's just about fitting it around schedules. But we're working on that, and we're pretty darn excited about the potential. I don't want to give any names away because I don't want to get anybody in trouble, but we're working on the potential to have some pretty special guys. And if we get them, Jimmy and the crew back in Montreal will be sure to get them out over the weekend via social media.
We will. And look, and I want to thank again, you know, earlier in the week as well, when we had general manager Montreal Canadiens, Kent Hughes, on. And for all you Montreal Canadiens fans who have, you know, reacted to that, reached out to us, had so many comments and we really appreciate it. You know, and I'll tell you too, I know that Kent Hughes does as well. So it's great stuff. And, you know, that's what we're here for. We want everybody to be able to connect and feel part of it, because we're all part of this hockey world. So we appreciate you taking the time to listen and watch the Eye Test on the Sick Podcast Network. I'm Jimmy Murphy. He's Pierre McGuire. We'll speak to you on Monday.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Eye Test with Pierre McGuire and Jimmy Murphy on YouTube, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.